The wall of the tunnel cracked above my head, and dust rained down like the ceiling itself was trying to bury me alive. I had 30 seconds before the whole passage came down, and I still had not found a way out. My name is Daniel Ashford, and 3 days earlier, my ship had gone down on a moon that was not supposed to have anyone living on it. The maps said empty rock. The maps were wrong. Something had been watching us since the moment we landed, and now I was alone underground, running out of air, running out of food, and running out of time. I pressed my back against the shaking wall and forced myself to breathe slowly. Panic would not help me now. I had 1 can of food left in my bag. 1. I had been saving it for the moment when I truly could not go on, and some part of me knew that moment was close. The shaking stopped, the dust settled, and in the sudden silence, I heard something that should not have been there. A breath, soft, ragged, coming from a narrow gap in the collapsed rock just ahead of me. I moved closer, my light shaking in my hand, and there she was, a girl, curled against the broken stone, her skin pale gray, her clothes torn and covered in dust, her whole body trembling from cold or hunger or both. She looked up at me with wide eyes, the color of deep violet, and for a moment, neither of us moved. She did not look dangerous. She looked like someone who had been left behind and forgotten, someone who had not eaten in days. I had seen that look before, on people back home during the hard years, and I could not walk past it now any more than I could have walked past it then. I knelt down slowly, so I would not frighten her, and I opened my bag. My hand found the can, my last can, and I held it out to her without letting myself think too hard about what I was giving up. She stared at it like she did not understand. Then she stared at me. Her hands shook as she reached out and took it from my fingers, and when she ate like someone who had forgotten that food was allowed to taste like anything at all. I sat beside her while she finished every last piece, and for the first time since the crash, I felt something other than fear. I felt like I had done one good thing in a place that had given me nothing but bad ones. Then the ground began to shake again, but this time, it was not the tunnel falling apart. This time, it was footsteps, many of them, heavy and fast, coming from the darkness behind us. I stood and pulled her behind me without thinking, my heart slamming against my ribs. Lights swept across the rock, and figures stepped into view, tall and armored, weapons raised and aimed straight at my chest. I had nowhere to run, and nothing to fight with. I closed my eyes and waited for it to be over. It was not over. Every single one of them dropped to one knee. I opened my eyes, confused, my breath caught in my throat. The armored figures were not looking at me at all. They were looking past me, at the girl I had just fed, and their heads were bowed low, like soldiers before a general, like citizens before someone whose word decided the fate of a nation. She stepped forward, and even weak and trembling, something changed in the way she stood. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet, but it carried through that tunnel like a command that had never once been questioned. The soldiers did not move until she finished speaking, and then, slowly, carefully, they lowered their weapons. One of them stepped closer to me, studying my face like he was trying to decide whether I was a threat or a miracle. He spoke in broken words of my own language, the kind a person learns only if they have spent time among prisoners or diplomats. "You fed her," he said. It was not a question. I told him yes. I told him she looked hungry and I had food, so I shared it. That was all there was to it. I did not tell him it was my last can, because in that moment, it did not feel important enough to say out loud. He looked at me for a long moment, then turned back to her, and spoke rapidly in their own language. She answered him with the same calm, steady voice, and though I could not understand the words, I understood the way the soldiers around her straightened, the way their whole posture shifted from caution to something closer to reverence. They lifted her carefully, supporting her weight, and one of them turned to me and said the words that changed everything that followed. "She is the ruler of this world," he said. "You have fed the one who commands us all." I did not know what to say to that. I stood there in a collapsing tunnel, covered in dust, holding an empty bag, staring at a girl who moments before had looked like nothing more than a starving stranger, and I understood that I had somehow just given away my last meal to the most powerful person on the entire moon. They did not harm me. I want to be clear about that. because in every story I had ever heard about meeting people from other worlds, the ending was never kind. But these soldiers, once they understood what I had done, treated me with a strange kind of gentleness. They gave me water. They gave me light to see by. They led me out of the tunnels and into the open air, where ships waited that I had never seen the shape of before, sleek and silver, and humming with quiet power. The girl, the ruler, was taken ahead of me, wrapped in warm cloth, surrounded by people who clearly loved her and had clearly been searching for her for a long time. I learned later, through slow and careful conversation over many days, that she had gone missing more than a week before I ever found her. She had wanted to see how her own people lived when supplies ran low, when the world she governed was not at its best. She had gone down into the lower tunnels without guards, without warning anyone, because she believed a leader who never felt hunger could never truly understand the people who did. The tunnel had collapsed while she was down there, and she had been trapped and starving ever since, with no way to call for help and no way to escape. When I found her, she had been only hours from the kind of ending that no rescue could have fixed. I did not know any of that in the moment. I only knew that someone was hungry and I had something to give. That was the whole of my thinking, and it turned out to be enough. 3 days later, once I had rested and eaten more food than I had seen in weeks, they brought me before her again. She was standing this time, dressed simply, her skin no longer pale, but glowing with the same faint light I would later learn was a sign of good health among her people. She looked at me with the same violet eyes, steady now instead of trembling, and she asked me, through a calm and careful translator, why I had done what I did. I told her the truth. I told her I did not know who she was. I told her I had 1 can of food left and a stranger in front of me who looked like she needed it more than I did, and that giving it away had felt like the only choice that would let me still respect myself afterward. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that the translator repeated slowly, word by word, so that I would understand every part of it. "You gave everything you had to someone you owed nothing to," she said. "That is rarer than you know, on any world, among any people." I did not have an answer for that. I still do not, if I am honest. All I know is that the meeting between our two peoples, which everyone had expected to end in conflict, instead became the beginning of something far better. Ships that had come ready for war left instead as the first guests of a new friendship. Leaders who had spent years preparing for battle sat down instead to build agreements that neither side had thought possible. They named the very first of those agreements after the two of us, though I never expected such a thing and never asked for it. It sits now in the records of two worlds, a simple promise that no one, on either side, would ever again be left to starve while others had food to share. I think about that tunnel often. I think about how close I came to keeping that last can for myself, how easy it would have been to walk past her in the dark and tell myself I had no choice. I think about how one small act, done without any thought of reward, ended up reaching further than anything I could have planned. I was just a stranded traveler with an empty bag and 1 can of food. She was the ruler of an entire world, hidden inside the disguise of hunger and exhaustion. Neither of us knew, in that moment, what the other truly was. We only knew that one of us needed help, and the other was willing to give it. That, in the end, was enough to change everything that came after.